Most people quit art before they 10, not because they had to, but because they decided, I'm not creative, I'm not artistic. And from that moment, they slowly disconnect from something their brain actually needs. And here's the problem. That decision does not just affect creativity, it changes how your brain processes the world, how it adapts, how it regulates stress, and how well you age. Because from a brain perspective, art is not a talent, art is sensory input combined with meaning. Art is how your brain interacts with the world, through sound, through movement, through rhythm, through design, nature, conversations, expressions. And when you remove that, your brain does not lose creativity, it loses flexibility, resilience, adaptability. Art is not something you do, art is something your brain uses. And once you understand that, you can use everyday experiences to improve your health, your performance, yes, your performance, and your longevity. And today I want to share how art actually affects your brain, why it plays such a big role in your health and performance, and actually really more than people realize, and how you can start using it without adding more to your already busy life. Because this is not about doing more, it's about understanding better. Welcome, I'm Heike Fallon. I'm the founder of Expand Health and the creator of the NeuroHP Method, and I combine neuroscience, sports therapy, and personal performance coaching to help leaders, athletes, and active people like you optimizing their health and personal performance for longevity. And for over 30 years, I've studied the brain and body and their connection, and I'm excited to share more. But before we do, make sure you download my free PDF. It's in the link. And let's get started, because most people disconnect from art, which is really sad, very early, and they decide, I'm just not creative, I'm not artistic. And from that moment, they stop engaging with it. But from a brain perspective, like I said, that decision has consequences, because art is not a talent. Art is sensory input combined with meaning, and that's it. And your brain is constantly looking for input: visual, auditory, movement, touch, and it is constantly assigning meaning. And that process alone is art. So when you listen to music, that's art. When you move to a rhythm, that's art. When you even walk through nature, that's a form of art, and you notice patterns, right? That's art. When you change your environment, if you rearrange, that's a form of art, right? Even conversations, tone, expression, art, right? If you think of theater, right? Your brain does not categorize this is art and this is not. It only asks, is there input? Is there meaning? And does this help me predict the world better? And now here's where this becomes important. Most high performers reduce their environment to efficiency. They remove all the friction, they remove variability, they remove distractions, and that works for productivity. It's very important, but not for adaptability. And over time, the brain becomes less flexible because it receives less variation. And that's where art becomes critical. So your brain is constantly changing. That's what's called neuroplasticity. And here's what drives it. Not just repetition, not just effort, but meaningful variations. And art provides that. When you engage with art, your brain activates multiple systems at the same time. Your visual, your motor, your emotional, your memory, your prediction, and most importantly, integrating all that. That's where change happens, not in isolation, but in connection. So now think about most training, that most people train the system separately, right? They do some strength training, they do a cardio, they do mobility, but the brain doesn't work that way. It integrates everything. And art is one of the fastest way to train integration. So let me give you a client example. I worked with a woman, high-level executive, very structured, very driven. She came to me because she felt mentally exhausted, not burned out, but constantly kind of on the edge. She said, I can still perform, but it feels just so much harder. More effort, less clarity, more second guessing. And now here's what stood out. Her entire day was structured. Meetings, emails, decisions, very little variation, very little sensory engagement, outside the screen, right? A lot of sitting on the computer. So we didn't add more productivity tools. We added art-based input. She started listening to music with more intention, not just like background noise, right? She started walking without her phone, paying attention to patterns in nature, paying attention to her movement, pay attention just in general to space. And we added simple unstructured movement, not like bicep exercises, but more exploratory. And within weeks, she reported something very interesting. She said, I feel like I have more space to think. Decision felt easier, less force, less effort. And that's neuroplasticity. That's the brain updating through better input. Most people don't realize how much stress they under because it's not like super extreme, right? But it's constant. It's that low level predictable stress all day. And that the nervous system adapts. It becomes protective. Everything becomes tight, restricted. And over time, that becomes your new normal. This is where art becomes a regulation tool, not because it relaxes you, but because it changes input. And when the brain senses uncertainty, it prioritizes protection over performance. But art introduces uncertainty in a safe way. New sounds, new movement, new patterns. And that tells the brain you can explore, right? You don't need to protect. And that shift from protection to exploration is everything. That's where flexibility returns. That's where movement improves. That's where stress decreases. Now, another example, a client, active, fit, constantly tight, neck, shoulders, back, tried everything, stretching, massages, strength, nothing lasted. What we noticed was not the muscles, but the input. So very limited variation, some movements, some patterns. So we introduced art-based variation with music, movement variability, visual exploration. And within just a few sessions, her range of motion improved, not because we forced it, but because the brain felt safer. And high performers are very, very good at thinking, analyzing, solving. But that can become also very much the limitation because not everything is solved with logic. Some things need just to be processed. And the brain does that through nonverbal systems, through movement, through sounds, through expression. And that's where art really comes in. And here's another perspective. Movement is not just muscle, it's brain driven. And the brain organizes movement through information, not effort. And art enhances that information. Again, when we talk in movement, obviously music improves timing, rhythm, flow, visual input. It improves coordination, balance, accuracy. So the list is so long, right? Unstructured movement improves adaptability. Now think about athletes, right? The best performers are not just strong, they're adaptable. They can adjust in real time. And that's not muscle, that's your brain. And that's art, right? Art trains that. Even something simple like changing rhythm or moving differently can change how the brain organizes movement. Better input creates better output without more effort. So, longevity is not just living longer, it's staying capable, clear, engaged, and adaptable. And that depends on your brain, your ability to continue learning, to continue exploring, to continue adapting. And this is where many people start to decline, not because they age, but because they reduce the input, less curiosity, less variation, less engagement. and the brain adapts in the wrong direction, unfortunately. So art prevents that because it keeps the brain engaged, stimulated, adaptive. So art is not just a hobby, it's a longevity strategy. Now, let me share a couple practical exercises here. One is called sensory sketching. So what you can do is take a pen and draw very slowly. Doesn't matter what it looks like, but notice the sensation, the pressure, the movement, and just kind of check in. It's a sensory motor integration. So it doesn't really matter what you do. Just doodle around a little bit, right? So that's one exercise you could do. Another one is play music, right? And move differently. Kind of explore as you listen to music. Focus on just the wrist. Focus just on an ankle and move differently with no structure. This improves really the coordination, the timing, the regulation. And another one is exploring visually, right? Look on your next walk, pay attention to patterns, shapes, colors. Let your eyes kind of explore. This enhances visual processing and reduces overload. So art is already in your life. The question is, are you using it intentionally? Because when you do, your brain adapts, your system regulates, your performance improves, your longevity increases. And if you remove art, you remove that whole adaptability. So if you like this video and this content, make sure you share that with a loved one and subscribe to my channel. I release a new video every week, so that way you won't miss it. And yeah, if you're ready to take action, I hope you downloaded the PDF. I'm Heike Fallon. I hope you will start investing in yourself today because you deserve it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.